r/nosleep. We went on a road trip in South America. The town we ended up in doesn't exist. I playfully hit my boyfriend in the shoulder. He laughed along with me as we finally reached another town. We were midway through our road trip through the beautiful South America when we found ourselves in a town that seemed strangely American. American shops and bars lined the streets. We drove to a gas station and stopped to fill up on gas and snacks. The sun was shining as I stretched my tired limbs. Mark got gas while I went inside to get snacks. A familiar bell chimed as I opened the glass door. Two people sat at a counter, a tall dark-skinned man whose name tag said Moses and a wide pale man scratching his second chin with a name tag saying Jim. Something about them gave me strange vibes. Moses's head seemed a little too long and I swore they were talking whenever I looked back, just whispering to each other about the new guest. I grabbed some oddly American snacks and made my way to the counter. "This is everything." Jim looked at me, grabbing a piece of raw chicken with his hands and sticking his whole hand in his mouth to eat it. I gagged as he took his now wet hand out of his mouth to ring them up. "May I ask, this area seems oddly American, why is that?" Jim didn't stop looking at me as he scanned my stuff. Moses rubbed his bare eye with a finger, rubbing it across the pupil before talking. "I don't know what you mean." He smiled. He handed me my stuff and smiled. He didn't give me a total, just handed me it and said goodbye. I frowned and left. As I left, I saw the two of them open the cash register and start to eat the money in it. I grew disturbed and quickened my pace to the car. "Gas is done." "Wait. Where'd you get all that American stuff?" he questioned. "It's all they had. We might want to get going. The people here give me the creeps." He patted my shoulder and reassured me. We got into the small car and drove off. It appeared we needed to drive through the town, then we'd be back on a long stretch of nothing but beauty. Almost no cars were on the road, but there was a ton of people walking place to place. Many had empty strollers with smiles as they waved and watched us go by. As we drove on the road, Mark looked at me, noticing the weird look on my face. "Are you okay?" His eyes were off the road. I closed my eyes and let out a sigh. "Yeah, everything is fine." He turned his head back to the road just in time to slam on the brakes. I flung forward. A painful sting came from my chest as I slammed forward. Luckily, I wore my seatbelt, but it still hurt. I looked up, seeing an old lady that seemed to be crossing the street. Her head turned like an owl's head to look at us with a smile before waddling away. Near the end of the crosswalk, she fell over. She didn't get up, she just kept the same walking motion on the road for as long as it took for us to drive away. We swerved past her and drove away. Mark was as weirded out as I was at this point. He drove faster as the amount of people stayed the same, some looking strangely familiar to others or other people I knew. On the side of the road was a large flag. It was red with black strips and a black star in the middle. We drove past it without a second thought. We drove further and further until there were no more people, but finally another car on the road. Mark realized he didn't know where we were, so we had to stop the other car and ask for directions. The large truck stopped, as did we. We rolled down our windows. The man had very little hair and yellow teeth. "Hey, we don't know where we are. Do you know how to get out of town?" The man smiled at us as his arm reached downwards. His raspy voice responded, "Yes, I know very well." He pulled out a gun. I didn't see what kind, but it doesn't matter. He fired 3 shots, all of them luckily missing us. He hopped out of his car and pointed the gun. Mark hit the gas as more shots echoed. We were very lucky none hit us. We sped as fast as we could until in the distance, I saw the same flag at the same intersection. He didn't bother slowing down even if we should have. A police car lit the lights ahead of us and slammed on the gas, pushing their car in front of ours. Glass shattered and metal bent as we slammed into the side of the patrol car. I was dazed for a couple seconds as we slid across the intersection. Sounds distorted and I finally came back to my senses. Just after that, I noticed the truck speeding down another side before coming to a screeching halt right next to us. First, the tall, lanky police officer left his car. He had no face but bumps where his face should have been. The other man jumped out with his gun, shooting like crazy. Bullets hit the metal of our car. I was on the opposite side of the madman, allowing me to exit the car rather easily. Mark was facing him. As he opened the door, a bullet hit his shoulder. He collapsed to the floor, grunting in pain. I almost went over to help him but was deterred by the gunshots. The madman backed away, however, as the officer drew closer and handcuffed Mark, lifting him in the air and throwing him in the wrecked police car. As they were distracted, I dashed past, gaining the attention of the madman. I hopped in his truck. It was still running with the keys. I slammed my foot down on the gas. A bullet shot through a window as I sped away. A sharp burning feeling came from a spot in my arm. Blood dripped out and I realized I had been shot in the arm. I knew I couldn't stop though. My breaths were heavy as I sped down the empty roads. The amount of people decreased significantly until it was near zero. Soon I passed the intersection, but the cars were gone. Only the flag and scraps of glass and metal strewn across the road. Soon the sun began to set and I saw weird things out of the corner of my eyes, humans with large beaks instead of mouths, or people with limbs that were way too big for their body. As the night went on, things got weirder and weirder. Voices whispered in my ears. I drove for hours with only my headlights illuminating the smiling people looking at me. Their deformities made them almost not human. I dozed off for just a second, but it was just enough time to ram into a light pole head-on. The windows shattered yet again as I awoke. I looked up and saw the flag dimly lit by a street light. I crawled out of my car, the burning in my arm still very present. Clutching my arm, I began to walk. The deformed things whispered as I ran past them desperately. My footsteps echoed on the cold cement. It was so late, I was so tired. Out of sheer tiredness I collapsed to the floor. I rolled onto my back and looked at my arm. I noticed it had gotten much worse. The flesh around it turned into a black mush barely held together. It was up to my elbow and smelled horrendous. I stood to my feet and walked again. The second wind hit me strong, pulling me forward. Rain started to pelt the ground faster and faster, leaving me soaked. There were now no people on the streets. The American building teased me with their familiarity of my hometown, wishing I could go back. The black went past my elbow, going to my shoulder and making black goo drip from my fingers. I found myself with a forest on each side of me. I was walking on a dirt road. The stars were bright and sunk deep into my soul. My head turned to the forest, spotting eyes that reflected eyes. Thousands of eyes stared back to me and hummed the songs of the orange moon. The cold nearly overtook me, but then the stars started to move and a figure appeared in front of me, a lanky man with a black blindfold covering his eyes that dripped black ooze. He wore a black suit and gave me a slight smile. "You are lost," his voice echoed through the trees. I knew I wouldn't last much longer in this condition. "I don't know how I got here," I could hardly talk. "You've gotten far. Do you know why you're here?" I didn't have energy to respond, but he knew my answer anyway. "I feel you deserve to know the truth. Come forth into my arms." I collapsed forward towards him and he grabbed onto me. I felt myself grow calm. It sounded like the sound barrier broke, and before I knew it I was in front of a large, destroyed military base. "There is no escape. Seek the truth if you desire. If not, I don't care." Ultimately it was my will to live, and lack of acceptance is that I will die here. I pulled myself to the building. Wrecked cars sat outside and torn apart guns. At the front of the base was a decimated tank and a metal door that was ripped open and covered in dust. I ducked into the base and everything was the same inside as outside: destroyed cars, tanks and drones. At one side of the base was a large computer, destroyed of course. I stumbled into the base and to the computer, finding a book laying there undamaged. I opened it. It appeared to be a journal. "Let me translate it for you. If this gets out there, I want there to be truth, not lies. However covered up it may be." In 1984 the US planned to develop a new weapon to counter the USSR. They began to develop a weapon that could open a rift to anywhere that would do two things. One, they could make overseas war much less expensive. They planned to send whole armies through rifts right to dry land or even straight to Moscow. Two, they could quickly send humanitarian aid to wherever or quickly squash any problems anywhere. They started to set up the base in Argentina, and after over a decade in 2002 they managed to develop the tech and planned to test it with a full-scale army and send them to Afghanistan. We reached Argentina at the base and they got the machinery ready. The sound barrier broke as explosions of different kinds of lights illuminated everything. In front of us it looked like there was a cut in a fabric blanket, but instead of a blanket it was the air in front of us. They cranked a lever to make the rift bigger. Nobody noticed it didn't lead to our intended destination. The tear grew bigger until it exploded and devoured each of us. We found ourselves in a strange town. Soon the whole military group was destroyed. Distorted beings that slowly took the form of human attacked us and tore everything apart. As of now I'm the only one left. But they will probably find me. Tell Candace I love her. I read in horror. My whole chest was engulfed by a black mass. If you desire to send a message, you can send one. He handed me what looked like an old iPhone. This was the first place I thought of to post my story. Let me finish by telling you the last things the man told me. "We don't live alone, we live with billions of others, but nobody knows. Things exist that we couldn't imagine. Perhaps that's where God comes from, I don't know. Hopefully no one will.